Do you find you're struggling to make the most of your SmartSuite data? If you're not using formulas or are scared to, then don't worry, you're not alone. But these formulas are powerful tools to utilize inside of SmartSuite because not only do they allow you to pull information from different tables and even fields, it allows you to do calculations, conditional logicking, and even text formatting within your databases without having to update this on your own. So if you're ready to learn 3 basic formulas to help you get started on your SmartSuite formula journey, then you've come to the right place. Let's get to it. Hey, how's it going? This is Eric with Consultation. If you're new here, I help save people time by building automated and AI solutions to help save people time from doing the work that they hate. In this video, I'm going to be explaining what formulas are inside of SmartSuite and giving you 3 practical examples that you can apply in your own databases so that you can start practicing and expanding and growing on these types of tools. But before we get started, I want to invite you to a free 30-minute consultation. And I know that you can get excited about lots of different tools, but it can suck, especially when you don't have the time or capacity to implement these specific tools that can save you time and make your life easier. That's why I want to try and help as much as I can. So please, if you're interested to implement something that you've seen in this video or one of my previous videos, or just interested in trying to see how automation can save your business time, head to the link in the description of this video at solvedcyclesolutions.com/30-minutes, or scan the QR code floating around my head and see how much time you can save in 30 minutes. Now that we have that housekeeping out of the way, let's just hop into my screen here and dive into the matter. I have an example invoicing system that I have built inside of my test zone database, and it's real simple. It has a status showing like when invoices need to be generated, ready for review when they're paid or when they're late. I have a due date. I have a contact that links and pulls up specifically the hours that I am looking for that have been completed in a different database that I've shown in a previous video. So why would I want to use a formula here? Well, let's just show a quick example of what the basic formulas can do, because the first thing is that they can do basic math, so addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Let's just say that I'm adding this more as an example of showing here's my hourly rate. And then I'm going to add this, which would show the number of hours that I completed in a month for this. So say my rate is $75 and I did 4 hours of work. Now, I could totally go in and just look at this, and I won't lie, I'm not that great at math, so I would probably pull up a calculator and just run this together. But if I wanted to link this data or connect it and calculate it and transform it into something new, I could make this my invoice total. So here I have the option to map number of hours and the rate. Now, you see this is saying that I would add the number of hours to my rate, but instead I can multiply it here. So if I change this, you'll see that 75 times 4 is $300. But let's say that I added 5 hours. So once that's saved, this automatically increases that amount. Or say I did it wrong and it's actually 3. So I can save that and it will refresh and subtract that information. So the power of formulas is that you can connect specific field types both within a certain record, but then you can also pull information from linked records and other data outside of this particular table. This is just, like I said, a very basic formula that can be useful for people. You'll see that this is uneditable in the field because it is dependent in that it's reacting to other data fields inside of this table. But I can go in and modify the field settings here, and right here where it says Advanced Editor, I can toggle this on, and you'll see that we now have a whole new model of how to enter information. So this allows us to pull up not just specifically numbers, number fields, but allows us to pull up other things such as dates, descriptions, and statuses, and much more. We'll actually be able to pull in different information from linked records, and I'll show you that in a minute. But we have so much more than just adding or basic multiplication here. There are a ton of different features that you can use, and they can get very advanced. And the other unique thing about these formulas is that you can actually build on top of each other. There are certain things you have to be careful of, but this is one way to have this all be able to pull multiple advanced pieces of data together. And this is something that SmartSuite formulas are very good at doing. So let's say this number of hours and rate, going back to this particular formula, we don't necessarily want to have this information mapped to the number of hours slot because we already know that we have a total number of hours that is being calculated in a separate table. So if I wanted to, I can remove that particular field and I can hit the contact here, which is the link from this table into a time tracker that I have set up. And one thing that you can see here is that currently there is nothing I can do, and I'm still getting an error that says that the argument type does not work. And so what we can actually do here is we can hit the dot. SmartSuite uses what's called a dot notation. So it allows you to pull up information, in this case, as a subcategory. So if I hit the dot, you see that the linked field appear at the bottom here. So this is pulling all of the information. Actually, let me see if I can show you this in another table, just so you can see that these fields are matching here. So we have things like the client, the description, the duration, meaning the total time, and we can pull that up inside the test zone. So the specific field that we want to map is actually going to be this hours completed. So let's take a look here. You can either search and see all the exact field types here, or you can also just put in a bracket and start typing. It does need to be next to the dot. And let's see if this works. Okay, so sometimes this can be a little finicky and you do need to be careful. But in this case, we have the double brackets now, and we can start typing in. You'll see hours, and it starts shrinking the number of options for the linked fields. So what we actually want is total hours. And so this is going to pull up all the total hours and times it by our hourly rate. And you'll see here that it is not that we're getting the 225 that we were originally saying for this, but we're actually getting 75 times 15.81. And if we went back over to this entire process, we would actually see that if the hours went up here, this would also increase the total invoice there. So now that you have a basic understanding of what formulas are and how the basic and advanced editor works inside of SmartSuite, I want to take a minute to show you 3 specific examples that we can use inside of SmartSuite for this particular invoice setup that may be useful for you for these particular instances. The first one I'm going to show you is how to modify text with a concatenate formula. The next one I'm going to show you is how you can use the sum function to pull up a series of different hours and multiply everything additionally with a sales tax. And then I'm also going to show you how to create an if statement to notify you in a status when a payment is late in this case. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete this particular field type, and then I'm also going to hide a couple pieces of information just so that it's a little bit easier for us to just look at everything all at once. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create another formula field. This one is going to just be a dumb Formula 1. I would highly recommend you keep track of these and list them however you want them to appear as field types so that you know this information. But in this case, I'm going to refer to everything as Formula 1, Formula 2, and Formula 3, just for the sake of clarity here. So the Formula 1 is going to be the text example. And this is one formula that is pretty useful for what's called concatenate. So what that means is if I hit concat, it's going to pull up this text function. So it allows you to combine multiple text values into one statement, or in some cases, a string. So this can be useful if you're trying to generate titles. And this is actually what the title here, you're able to modify with an auto-generated title. This is, in a sense, a concatenate field where we're able to pull specific information that we want into a field type, and it will automatically update whenever that's changed. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the use for concatenate, and it's going to immediately put us inside this parentheses. So maybe what I want to do is have I want to use the contact's name. And this is, again, where I can pull up specific info, linking it to that previous field, where in this case, I'm going to say, I'm going to pull up, let's take the first name. And then what we're going to do, and this is one thing that's kind of annoying with SmartSuite formulas, is that I do wish that I could just hold the specific example that they give up on this other part of the screen, just because it's easier for me to go back and look at it. But you'll see that each word has to have parentheses, or is pulling up a specific field, and then is separated by a comma. If you are trying to you'll see how this example shows that if you put in this is a test and it's all together, it's going to put one long string here. So let's say, in this case, I want to just put a space between the first name and the last name. I'd have to actually manually put this space there for separating the different field types. So here, let's do, again, contact. And we're going to do the dot notation to pull up the last name. And then maybe what I'll do here is just say, put invoice. So after that space, or that comma, I'm going to put double quotations, and I just have to hit it one time. It's going to pull up immediately a pair of quotations. So I'm going to hit that space bar just to, again, add that specific space so it appears like a full sentence. And you'll see that what should show up when we save this information is first name, last name, invoice. So if I hit add field, you'll see that this pulls up as Michael No Name Invoice, which was the fake name that I set up for this particular client. Now, you can continue to add as much information here, but let's say I just wanted to add the due dates here, and you'll see that I'm getting an error set up. This is where you'll see that it says invalid syntax. It's basically there is an extra quotation mark there. This is something where you do need to be careful, because this can be very distracting, or this can be very messy if you're having to add lots of different pieces of information. But if you are able to keep track of all the parentheses, the quotations, and the brackets, it will be easy to find the specific piece of information that's missing from, or that is standing out, that's causing this formula to fail. So if I set this up here, you'll see that, and this is another thing to keep in mind, just as I'm remembering, you'll see how it says Michael name, invoice, due date. So even though we have a due date field here, it is seeing this quotation mark specifically as a text. So in order to separate this, I have to add the comma, and then I have to delete the field. I hit the wrong button, I hit the delete the bracket, but if that disappears, you can quickly just type that back in. And now when we hit update a field, you'll see that it shows up as invoice July 19th, 2024. Now, granted, the invoice and the July are smushed together now, but we can go back and edit that. And basically the thing is, if I go in and make another invoice for a separate client here, let's try and map, let's go in and pull up, I think I still had Bob's Burgers saved there. So let's link this client, and you'll see that the field type should automatically invoice it. Okay, so it looks like we don't have any names listed for Bob's Burgers. So let's put in, again, just for an example here, I'm going to put in first name, Bob Belcher. And let's save this. And if I close this, and you'll see that if there were no first name or last name, it would just show invoice. There's no due date here, so it means that it's only going to pull up that information if it shows. It's not going to consider it a fail. It's going to consider it just empty. So it's going to put whatever is in that specific field type. So this is, again, a basic example of how to do the concatenate invoice. So now that you have an understanding of that, let's move on to the second field formula example, which in this case, if I can spell, is how to do a sub-tax calculation, or maybe better to be show a late fee calculation. So let's put this here. And what we want to do is we want to have additional multiplication that goes beyond just a simple 1-to-1 or 1+1 example. So I'm going to turn on the advanced editor here. So what we need to pull up first is the lookup field, which is already looking up a sum of all of the hours that are linked together from multiple different records. You'll see that as soon as I set this up, there's an error saying use an aggregate function to refer multiple entry-linked records. And basically what this is wanting to say is that if we look into this particular record, and I'm going to search inside the contact, you'll see there is a specific roll-up field that is going to be pulling up here that says total hours. This is a formula that I built separately that is basically summing all the linked records to a particular project that I have, or it's linking the total time between a series of different projects that are all linked together. So the formulas aren't able to necessarily multiply everything all together. It needs to know that we need to sum all of that in this case. So if I hit sum and add a parentheses, and then I will close this, this is going to work as one particular mathematical function to sum all of the numbers inside of this lookup field so that we get this 15.81. And you'll see that it's the exact same thing here. So now that we have that, let's go and we're trying to multiply the specific hourly rate. So if I, again, type in a bracket and type contact, the field options are going to reduce until it's matching the only thing that is available that hits that criteria. I hit a period and had another bracket, which then opens up again all of the linked fields that we can utilize. In this case, I'm going to say hourly rate. So now we have this, let's save that information, and you'll see that that pulls up different from the example invoice total that I gave earlier because it's a lower rate, but it's $1,027.52. Now, let's say we were trying to calculate this late fee. Because this is a already completed mathematical function, and we want to find the percentage, let's say this late fee is, if it's not paid on time, there's a 25% markup. So we want to calculate the specific amount that this summed lookup field and the hourly rate is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add brackets to close off that equation, and then I'm going to multiply that by 0.0, we'll do by 0.25. Let's make sure we got that dot in there. And what will happen is we'll see that this is now down to $256.08. Maybe that's a little steep. Let's go ahead and just add a 0 so that it's actually like, let's make it, see what happens when we do 0 or 2%, 2.5%. Let's try that. That may be better. And so you'll see that now we have a formula it's $25 and it's 0.688. So in our brains, we could obviously round this up as well, but maybe we want it always to be the exact amount. So let's add brackets around this entire thing and add a round. And basically what this is saying is this is a mathematical function that allows us to round numbers to a specific decimal point. So I'm going to use this. Actually, let's get rid of that original bracket. And you'll see that there is an error here saying an invalid syntax. So I think the issue is that we are missing, and this is a good opportunity to take a look at how some of these formulas can get a little tricky. I thought I had this all set up properly. So if I removed the round, is this okay? No, it doesn't look like it. Let's try and just make this as basic as possible again. So it is still saying invalid syntax. So we have the sum lookup. Oh, I think we're missing a bracket. Let's try this. Okay. So we figured out that issue there. So now let's just type in round and put in the bracket there. And let's close this off. Now, the other thing here is that we're having an error because there's two arguments in this particular function. So this is basically saying that this first part here is the entire number down below. We need to add a comma after the 0.25. Actually, no, we should probably set it as after the parentheses, and then we put the digit. So what this means is if it says 0, it's going to round to the nearest whole number. We put 1, it's going to round to the 10th decimal. And then what we want, let's do the 100th decimal because that makes the most sense. Okay, so it looks like maybe we have too many brackets here, or too many parentheses again. So let's try just getting rid of this, and that should take care of it. So when I hit the late fee, you see that calculates to 25.69%. So now that you have the concatenate, and we talked about some more advanced math functions that you can utilize inside of SmartSuite, I want to show you what's called a nested statement, and this is going to have a conditional if statement that's built into it. And what I want to show you here is that basically something that pops up that says if the client's payment is late, if I do not mark the status as paid, then and it's past the due date, then I want this to be notified that it's overdue. So how do we build this? Well, this is going to be a little bit more tricky, so buckle up. So I'm going to open up the third and final formula table we'll be doing today. I'm just going to call this Formula 3. late notice, and we're going to toggle on the advanced. If we look at the specific rules for the if statement, it's going to say that basically we have to set up an expression, and then we have to insert one value or a second value. And a second value. The first value is basically saying if this statement is found to be true, then this value will appear. If it is false, then the second one will appear. So let's set up this if statement. And what we want to do is we want to, let me actually hop back into the formula here. So we want to calculate the date difference from what the due date is to this very moment. So in this case, we need a special function here that is called date difference. So this will allow us to calculate the variable or the difference between two specific days in a formula. So in this case, we're able to enter the due date here as the date 1. And then we have to add a comma to separate the second value. And there is a specific function for this exact moment, which let me try and find it in here now. I get it mixed up between like today and now, but this is the one that we want. And then the last thing that we need to do for the date difference, you'll see, we need to set in a unit. And what that means is because there's so many different time variables that can keep tracked for, we want to count the number of days, because if you're trying to add a late fee, we're really just looking for as soon as that day hits is passed. So let's say this is days, and let's make sure that we will need to make sure this is put in quotes here. You'll see that we still have an error, and that's fine because it's basically saying that the if statement is having three arguments. So we'll get to that in a minute. But so we've calculated these dates, and what we want to say is that this date difference needs to be, we want this to run if it is greater than 0, or the date difference here. So if we do this, and let's see, I want to make sure that I have this set up properly, because this is the thing with formulas, is that they seem very easy getting set up, but they can get very tricky very quickly the more steps you take. This is just trying to show you how some of this can function. What may be useful is you may have to break things down by piecemeal. So let's actually, well, never mind. We'll keep going as is, but if you have multiple different functions, you can test each out in individual formulas and then combine them into a larger roll-up or larger built together formula. So in this case, we have the date difference, and we want this to say it is greater than 0. And so here, what we're saying is we want, if it is greater than 0, we want this to say late. But then if we don't see anything, we just want this to be blank. So this should be all set. Let's test it out and see how it looks. So this is saying that it is late because the due date is greater than 0 for today. And if I were to move it, the due date to say the 25th, we'll see that notice disappeared. That really concludes everything I wanted to show you in this basic tutorial. I hope that you got the basics that you were looking for. If you have questions about formulas, let me know in the comments. One key thing I forgot to mention at the beginning is don't get these particular formulas mixed up with Airtable's formulas. Those have different structures and they don't always mesh together. They are not necessarily copy and paste from one to the other. So if you found this video useful, please consider subscribing to the channel, or also consider sharing with someone that you think needs this information as well. And don't forget about the free 30-minute consultation that I set up at the beginning of this call, that I mentioned at the beginning of this call. And really, just once again, thank you so much for watching. And this is where I stop.